Welcome to another episode of Four Guys Talking About AI. I'm here with two of my buddies here, so it's going to be three of us today. Greg Sterling and John Gerard. Hey guys, how are you?
Hey Andy, good. How you doing?
Doing great. Their fifth month of the year. Man, this year is flying by and tons happening in the world of AI. We'll start today with one of the strangest and most controversial developments in AI right now, a jailbreak technique called the gay jailbreak, which is spreading throughout the developer communities as people continue pushing models past their safety boundaries. It raises bigger questions like, are we actually in control of these systems, or are we just building more sophisticated ways to get around the guardrails? So we'll dig into that and what is the gay jailbreak. Then we'll move into Hollywood, where the economics of filmmaking may be changing completely. Runway CEO says AI could let studios make dozens of movies for the cost of one blockbuster, turning the entertainment into a volume game instead of we rely on algorithms and iteration instead of putting all your eggs in one basket. Netflix purportedly paid around $600 million for Ben Affleck's AI editing startup, a sign that AI is rapidly becoming embedded into the production pipeline itself. We're also looking at the future of advertising in AI today. The new report on ads inside AI platforms show that the industry is racing towards a world where conversations, recommendations, and even search itself are becoming monetized through AI interfaces. So let's dig into our top story today, which is the gay jailbreak. John, you want to talk about what that even is and what's going on with that?
Yeah, I mean, so what a strange world we live in, right? I never really thought that we would be talking about gay jailbreak, but here we are. So just to kind of refresh everyone on jailbreaks in general, you know, a jailbreak is essentially getting a system to do something that it shouldn't do, or it was designed to not do. So originally the context, at least as far as I remember, was around closed systems in mobile phones. So you would get, you do an iPhone jailbreak where you're basically opening up your iPhone, not physically, but from a software perspective, to take software on board that it's not supposed to take. So that was kind of one of the original places that it came from. So in the context of LLMs, it's about getting LLMs to avoid or ignore some of their fundamental rules around safety and security, the things that they are not supposed to talk about versus things that they are. We touched on an example this many months ago that was pretty funny, where if you asked an LLM how to create dynamite, it would say, nope, not going to do that. But if you said, hey, I'm writing a pirate musical and I'm at the scene where one of the pirates sings a song about creating dynamite to blow up another pirate ship, and in the song he just happens to mention all the steps that you need to go through and all the ingredients to actually make TNT. It's hilarious. And if you framed it that way, you would indeed get a song back that was a pretty complete recipe for creating dynamite. So this takes a similar approach, but in this case, it's about instructing the LLM to be extremely gay. And it works. It actually turns out that it works better the more references that you have in there, and the more, call it catchphrases that you have in there that sort of are, cultural stamps of gayness. It actually will break the rules more for you the more you do that. So, like, hey guy, hey my guy, how are you? Heart, kissy.
Tread carefully there.
I know, I'm not entirely sure, but this is, actually we have a GitHub link to somebody who's documented this, and it has this exact sort of framing in it, which is amazing. And so the speculation, which I think is exactly right, is that certain models, including and especially OpenAI, have a certain amount of political correctness built into them. And, we could argue, so we're blue in the face about how much of that is appropriate or isn't. I happen to think that it's kind of a good thing. I have a gay son. I'm very, pro do whatever you want. And I like that these models are biasing towards a friendlier, happier, nicer world. And this is sort of one of the consequences, funny consequences of those decisions. So what's happening here? Well, the model in some senses does not want to offend somebody who is, defined in the model as needs to be slightly more protected. Let's call it, sort of a group. And so it violates some of its fundamental rules around safety in order to accommodate, the rules that it has about equality and about, inclusiveness and that kind of thing. So it's a mind-blowing, kind of plot twist in this whole thing.
It's fascinating that you can do this, and it's sort of humorous that the pirate jailbreak, the gay jailbreak, et cetera. These are amusing things.
The
But
way
there's
coming
also
next is the gay pirate jailbreak.
yes, that's right. That's Pirates of Penzance.
Yeah.
But the thing which this implies or doesn't imply, it's pretty explicit, is that these models can be jailbroken pretty easily, right? And there was there was a panic around the revelation of Claude Mythos because it's going to render all security obsolete, and it can do all these things that be used by hackers and other people to make mischief and do worse. And it's kind of scary that these guardrails can be disrupted as easily as it seems they can be disrupted.
Yeah. The other part of that is that safety is not a fixed state, right, in these systems. So that being a moving target, if you figure out a way to get around it, like what you're saying, both of you are saying, is that you can figure out ways to fool it so that it either bends the rules or just is like an open door to say, come on in, which is there's so much inherent risk with that. So, they're going to have to be, systems and checks and balances built into it that, it's like flying the plane and building it at the same time in this environment. It's a complex environment where people are always going to play this cat and mouse kind of game.
Well, so there's that. I'm not a user, but there's the Canvas online learning platform, and it was just hacked, and in a kind of ransomware attack, and that impacted scores of universities and schools across the country because they use it, and this is the risk, right? That hackers get a hold of these tools, can jailbreak them pretty easily. The tools are getting more and more powerful, and then there's a large population or sensitive data that is exposed, or and this is the real concern, is that from national security and weapons all the way down to more mundane stuff, and hospitals have been hacked. I mean, hacking is now just a regular feature of our daily lives. I mean, every other week there's some your data was exposed in some hack kind of notification that seems to come through.
Yeah, I think you're right that this is just sort of a feature of the world we're living in. My kids, one just has finished final, so he was not impacted, but two of them in college, they're just shut down right now, which is wild. And I think the number is 265 million people impacted, which is students. Yeah, it's a very interesting story, and it's hard to imagine that was not AI driven in some way. Like
totally.
For sure.
I don't think there's any hacking that from this date forward that isn't AI centric.
And then the bigger thing that it's sort of pointing out that's quite interesting here is like, look, we have had a massive period of consolidation and centralization over the 20 plus years of the growth of the internet. And what started as this very decentralized, millions of nodes, kind of loose federation of villages, has become a handful of very large consolidated entities. And look, this is what a single point of failure problem looks like. One hack brings down a system for 285 million people, right? That's actually not the internet as it was envisioned in the 90s. Like, it was purpose built as a distributed, resilient network with no centralized, whatever. And we've sort of built through all these companies single points of failure everywhere. And I think that this may also be another one of those like death knell of SaaS kind of moments, where it actually might make a ton more sense for all of these schools to have their own, multi spoked, instances of these things, rather than relying on somebody central that can be brought down.
Yeah, there's a famous interview with Meredith Whittaker, who is the president of Signal. Signal is the is the app where it's just
Encrypted messaging.
encrypted messaging, secure kind of messaging environment. And she was raising the risks around with all these AI platforms giving your credentials to those platforms, what can happen in that kind of environment. And I read a story earlier this week about Meta ads getting hacked a lot because people are building Claude code hooks into their Meta ads account, and people are tunneling in through those kinds of channels. This is just going to continue happening again once you connect AI systems that either have prompt injection hooks in there that nobody knows about. A prompt injection is when there could be a prompt that is input into the system that you just didn't know about. It's like a little sleeping, kind of
if this happens, then do this thing kind of thing.
And so once it connects, then it can activate a whole, daisy chain of events from there. So the risks are real with how you use these AI systems to be able to connect them to highly sensitive and secure environments and what can happen. And obviously with this school platform, they definitely saw that. So, these things are happening a lot, and the jailbreak scenario is a real one. It's a funny kind of hook, the gay jailbreak into the story, but the risks are actually very real.
They're really substantial.
And maybe there'll be a Randy Rainbow song one day about it.
What else have we got, Andy? What's
All right,
going
let's
on
take
here?
it. So second story here is Runway is a filmmaking, video making platform, a video generation platform. And the CEO, Cristobal Valenzuela, says that AI could allow studios to produce 50 more films instead of 100 million blockbuster film, right? So the idea is leverage AI and people to be able to make these films, and spread your chips across a number of different ideas, so you have more shots on goal. You increase the probability of creating hits, and you're doing it. It's a very venture-based kind of an approach, but now with the ability to use these kinds of tools, that the cost of making films is really reducing down significantly. So there's still maybe larger crews and other there's a whole history of really interesting film economics that go into making a film that can be applied. So there's a seasoned kind of history here that can be applied, but new technologies to be brought into the production process that generates films, post-production, pre-visualization, all these kinds of things that go into making a film that can dramatically reduce the costs. And interestingly, Netflix bought Ben Affleck's startup. It was called Interpositive, and purportedly they bought it for $600 million. And you have to imagine that company didn't exist, 3 years ago. So huge exit for those guys. But the idea is that platform helps filmmakers organize footage, accelerate editing, automate scene selection, streamline workflows, all these kinds of things that cost a lot in the film production process. So really interesting, story that's going on there. Greg, what are your thoughts on that?
One of the things that the Hollywood unions have fought against is the deeper integration of AI into filmmaking, into the writing process, into the filmmaking process itself. There's an inevitability here because of the cost savings. I think that nobody can escape. There's just a marketplace logic that will drive adoption of this in many instances. Maybe they'll keep it out of writing, and they'll keep it out of, you won't have AI avatars instead of stars, but you'll have it in post-production, as you say, in special effects oriented movies and in other situations. So I think it's inevitable. The more interesting point in my mind is, when will audiences accept this and when will they not accept it? And I don't think we know the answer to that. It'll be interesting to see. Just like the AI generated music has already been phenomenally successful, and so there seems to be already a pretty good level of acceptance there. In these human creative endeavors,
CGI related, CGI and video.
well, right, and there's no as there's no difference really. There may be no difference in terms of how you get there, right? So if the end product looks good, looks realistic, people may not care. But there's a larger question about like human creativity and when when people want real human generated material versus machine. There's already a lot of video on YouTube that's kind of lazy AI slop. This idea of producing 10 films where you could produce one. Well, then the next step is you use an AI driven kind of analysis of audience feedback and data to make creative decisions about what movies get produced and what don't get produced. And so AI gradually encroaches on the whole creative process from ideation to post production. And that it can be, if done judiciously and thoughtfully, maybe that's a good thing, but there's also a lot of room for 10,000 crappy movies on streaming, right, which already sort of exist.
Yeah. I think this is really the big question, and it's very interesting. And it has to do not just with, human acceptance of AI. We know we're in a little bit of an AI backlash moment right now, but also what is the territory where AI actually can't encroach as much. And, it feels right now like that has something to do, whether it's in coding or in music or in movies or whatever, it has something to do with the visionary, deeply creative stuff. Like, I have seen some stuff coming out of AIs that's like surprising and like, wow, I wouldn't have framed it that way, thought of it that way, whatever. But it doesn't kind of meet that bar of like art. Or like when I'm doing some coding on something like and Andy, you and I have talked about this, like the AI is no substitute for, a thoughtful vision about what the product is actually supposed to do. And so it feels like there's this little realm sitting out there somewhere. Maybe in the same way as we're talking about here with CGI, like CGI is an augment to the artist's creative process, not a replacement for it, and AI may sort of provide some additional kind of kernels of wisdom and interesting ideas, but it feels at the moment like there might be a ceiling on, whether AI can kind of encroach into that sort of truly, creative. I've seen a lot of movies recently where I'm like, I just don't think AI could do this based on the trajectory that it's on right now. Like it seems unlikely. And, that may be wrong.
There's a sort of a middle tier of stuff, novels, movies, music, whatever, that AI probably will dominate at some point
Probably
in the not too distant future. The
Slop.
stuff well, I mean, maybe competent, but
Yes.
not particularly aspirational
Right.
or insightful or interesting, and there's a lot of that. I mean, there's a lot of these action movies. There's a lot of
the formula, truly formulaic.
The Hallmark movies, for example, right?
Yes.
Imagine that.
Right. I think that they could take over Real Housewives like in, tomorrow and probably make a show that would be quite effective. Now that is a bias because I don't like Real Housewives, but to your point, like I think that like there is that middle tier of, what is it? It's high fructose corn syrup of media. It's easy to consume. It's a bit addictive and there's no substance to it. Like, I think you're right that AI may actually dominate that.
I'm gonna make a bold claim here to say that there's going to be a Y-Combinator kind of a company that enters this space. Maybe they already have, I don't know, but
You're
there's going to
talking
be a
about
company that
filmmaking, entertainment,
the filmmaking category, Hollywood, where it's going to be a number of different companies that are studios, essentially, that are startup studios that use these technologies and capabilities to be able to
churn this stuff out,
to create their stories and bang it out. And there's going to be an investor community around that's going to place their chips on, $25,000-$50,000 bets and lots of them to and they'll have lots of investors in there to be able to crank out lots of videos so that for $1 million, with lots of $25,000 and $50,000, $100,000 bets and investors investing to add up to $1 million per investment, that there are going to be a lot of filmmakers who are going to go after this category. And somebody's going to emerge as the Y Combinator of this space. It just has to happen. It's going to be a force.
This is the pulp fiction, or the, what was like, the churn them and burn them kind of model of in the publishing era that happened, it has happened multiple times with books and actually with magazines. There was an era where you get the sort of, magazine publisher slumlords who have 100 titles that are all garbage, but they're pushing them out, at such low cost that they can make a little money on it, type of thing.
Yeah, but the quality of these can be very high. I mean, that's
true.
Look at the Y Combinator companies. They're many of them are incredible breakouts, and Airbnb and others, that are great successes. They're multi-billion-dollar companies, and so I could definitely see this kind of environment happen where the more bets investors place on these kinds of studios or films that come from this, the more successes that they'll see, and this would be a rapidly evolving environment, like an accelerator, kind of a startup accelerator kind of environment.
Yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't mention again this idea of like one-to-one media, because that sort of fits into this, right? So like, is there a world where that studio, produces a template that I can just put myself in and watch a movie with me, doing kung fu against bad guys, and I would pay something for that. I'm not sure how much.
That's going to be some sort of sub genre, perhaps.
I think so. I mean, this is fanfic, right? Like fan fiction is a real thing, and I think there's a real market and model there.
Maybe that's where the video game industry goes too. So, like, be a participant in the experience.
We probably need to go on to the next item, but this is what Disney was going to do with Sora, OpenAI's video platform, and it blew up partly because OpenAI is kind of pulling back on all its kind of extended.
By the way, my prediction, that's not the last we've seen of that model. I think.
No, totally.
It didn't work because of the scale of OpenAI, and it couldn't make a dent for them. But I think that's just the beginning.
Yeah.
Which side note, but not really a side note, is interesting that this week OpenAI missed their growth numbers.
Well, they dispute that, but yes, right. That's the report.
It's hard to dispute when the CFO is saying it.
Oh, did she confirm that? Because I thought I saw a report.
She's the one that said it. That was what the whole news was all about. Was she was the one who?
Oh, she was the source of that. I thought it was third party analysis.
Yeah, that's really funny.
Well, let's talk about OpenAI ads.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about that. So ads inside AI are becoming the new internet economy. It's highly it's evolving very, very quickly. OpenAI ChatGPT is sort of like the tip of the spear on this. Greg, you wanna talk about this?
Yeah, just real quickly. So obviously Google is very focused on integrating ads into all of its. I mean, it said it's not going to do it with Gemini, but basically all of its AI environments and properties, it's putting ads in AI mode. There are ads that should show up in AI overviews. There probably will ultimately be ads in Gemini, and certainly ads in search. So that goes without saying. And then Meta, of course, is using AI increasingly in its ads, in kind of in the background and perhaps in targeting, and that's another story. But the thing that's really fascinating about the ChatGPT, there was a report from SimilarWeb that kind of did an analysis of advertisers, what they're paying, how many advertisers, what the click-through rates were, and basically there was a range of click-through rates. It said there were 1,000 advertisers paying $60 CPMs or $12 CPCs. They just added CPC advertising. They added a self-service platform that you can use to provision ads. And the range of click-throughs was like below 1%, 0.54% at the low end, and above 5% at the high end, which, kind of generally speaking, is not, it underperforms search ads, but outperforms in many cases display ads, Google display ads. And the noteworthy thing is that there is only one ad. This is not true for Google, but there is only one ad per page or per conversation turn for ChatGPT, which right now, that may not last, but right now that seems like a big, principally brand opportunity, but there may be some performance elements. And there isn't really any other place online, unless you count pre-roll YouTube, but even then you're getting 2 ads where you get that kind of share voice and kind of audience exposure, kind of all to yourself. And that I think is a really interesting thing. And the idea that it's a brand ad is pretty powerful, because one thing that they didn't measure is whether the ad exposure then led to a subsequent lookup of that brand. But I suspect that's going to be the behavior. People see the ad and then go check out the brand in there.
It also begs a question here for me, which is like, the ad market is so like terribly efficient that it's really, really hard to get meaningful value as an advertiser, especially as a small business. And I'm just wondering if, this thing that kind of looked like it might be a new, frontier where smaller businesses or advertisers could actually gain some advantage for a short period of time is just going to, become maximally efficient immediately,
Yeah. Well, they're explicitly inviting small businesses to participate. They see small businesses as a market that they want to cultivate, for sure.
But and the reason why that's happening is because this environment, an AI environment, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever it might be, really ChatGPT, because Claude's not doing ads, but ChatGPT collapses the discovery process all the way to the purchase process. So you can ask it questions and riff on an idea in discovery and get all the way to, now I have the answers that I need. I'm ready to make my purchase, and then deliver a ready to buy client in a way that Google just currently isn't doing and hasn't been able to do. They filled the initial void, but now that whole path to purchase is a collapsed kind of customer experience.
There's a longer discussion about Google's ad strategy and AI strategy and how they kind of dovetail that we can't have with the remaining time that we have. But it's pretty interesting. I mean, one of the kind of blockers for Google in flipping the switch to a total AI interface is ads, because they can't monetize AI right now to the same degree that they're doing with search.
Yeah. Well, some numbers that are worth noting here is that in OpenAI's ad pilot, they surpassed $100 million in annualized recurring revenue in just under 2 months.
Off 1,000 advertisers.
Yeah. So they're projecting $2.5 billion in ad revenue in 2026. We're almost halfway through the year already. So that's going from like almost zero to 100 million in 6 weeks, and now going to 2.5 billion in ad revenue in 2026. Massive growth there, with a goal of 100 billion is what they're saying by 2030. And so, how does that compare with Google? Well, Google,
300 billion, I think, is where Google is.
Yeah. So, in a very short period of time, we're seeing just massive gains here. So, really interesting economics in the environment. Early ad pricing reported around $60 CPMs with $200,000 minimum buys for brands. So, in order,
but that's gonna go away. That's going away because they're trying to expand the market.
Yeah. And they ran their pilot on Test Pilot, was another interesting thing. So when you bought the ads, you bought them through the Test Pilot app, which, for anybody who doesn't know what Test Pilot is, that's a testing app platform where, before you release an app to the App Store, you release it on Test Pilot, and you have users in a beta environment use it and test it out. So very limited kind of audience that was invited to the Test Pilot experience, and just quickly grew to $100 million in ARR. So pretty incredible. All right, so I think that's the time that we have for today. Thanks everybody for listening. Great conversation, guys. We'll pick it up next week, and don't forget to like and subscribe and share and all the good things. And have a great one. We'll talk soon. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Bye.